So why I wanted to kind of turn this a practice talk as opposed to a Dharma talk is that I want to share with you what I've been practicing with in the last couple of weeks and a little bit make it as an invitation of how we might um, specifically work with the precepts. So, how this arose for me was I think it's just 2 weeks ago. It seems like a long 2 weeks, but in many ways, right? But we had a Jukai ceremony here in Idlewild for someone who's been a long-term member of our Sangha and a student of mine. And we actually, it was our first time having receiving the precepts ceremony here at our home temple in Idlewild. And in preparing for that and then doing that, and we were very fortunate to have Choa be able to come up and be part of that as well. And that was really neat for people from the Sangha here to meet him who haven't yet. Um, and especially, it was my first time officiating at a Jukai by myself. And, um, to sit in the position where you've seen your teachers for so long sit, many teachers sit, was so moving. And I really felt like it was just the lineage doing it, rather than like me personally. And so it was really an honor to sit in that spot and also really moving about what we're inviting, what we're asking to receive, and what we're committing to practicing. And I was struck in the Gate of Sweet Nectar this morning where we say, I have raised the Bodhi mind. I have raised the mind that wants to live with intention, that wants to live being awake, that wants to live being aware, that wants to live feeling in connection to all things. And, looking at the precepts, at least the way kind of I feel like it was explained to me, is these are helpful signposts to how to live an awakened life. It's not, and some of you are here, including Fukan, who, we had that Jukai ceremony together. Gosh, it's going on 2 years ago now, right? And I don't, if Ale's still in the Zendo, I know some of you are in the class right now, and I believe that Choyu facilitated it this weekend. How it was explained to me anyway, originally by Maizumi Roshi, was it's not a commitment to the center. It's not a commitment even to being a Zen person. It's a commitment to faith in one's own Buddha nature. And if it feels like accepting these precepts will support one's growth in that way, then that's the reason to do it. So kind of starting with preparing for having the Jukai here, and then having the ceremony, and it was a really neat community event. Some people in our Idlewild sitting group will have seen, a more formal kind of Zen ritual that way. So that was really neat too. So it got me appreciating the precepts, or remembering to appreciate the precepts. And then with some of the world events that have been happening in the last, I guess we're going on like 3 weeks now, and feeling a lot of feelings about that. And I won't, I don't want to offend anybody or make any assumptions about different people's points of view. Just speaking for myself, I think one of the strongest feelings was I feel like I came up in a time, from thinking about being a young teenager, where I really, and maybe one would call it had a very naive sense of making progress and having a more compassionate and equitable society. And I definitely very much felt part of that, and very sort of, kind of sense of life mission that was to be part of that. And I was lucky to come up in a time where there was a lot of movement dynamically, not all in one direction, but a lot of movement in that way. And so part of my, on a personal level, part of my, kind of sense of despair in the last several weeks has been coming to terms with stuff doesn't all go my way on a really, really big level. And how do I, just feel what I'm feeling the feelings of despair and frustration, and how do I work with that? So the precept that came to mind for me seems like sort of a funny connection, but stick with me here, was chaste conduct. So I'm going to kind of look at the two parts of chaste conduct according to the Zen Peacemaker translation. So the first one is, I will encounter all creations with respect and dignity. So, in chaste conduct, if you have more studied the precepts, and certainly historically, was the precept that was associated with not being intoxicated, whether it's by drugs or alcohol, but also by any form of distraction, phones, Netflix, gambling, whatever, chocolate. But this translation doesn't focus on the non-intoxication. So I will encounter all creations with respect and dignity, of course, including oneself. Where I went with that in terms of the events of the world kind of aspect was, I felt like I don't have a red telephone here where somebody with a bunch of power in the world is calling me and asking me opinion about what should we do. I remember I used to have dreams that different presidents were calling me and asking me what to do. So there's some degree of grandiosity, but haven't had that of late. So where I went with that, in terms of the aspect of the precept of I will encounter all creations with respect and dignity, is I felt like I can try to do that. I can try to do that as I move through my days, and be more aware of whether it's, the lizards in the front yard, or the guys walking across the street, construction crew, or anybody, my friends and acquaintances and people in a class with me. Can I bring to the fore of my mind encountering all creations with respect and dignity here where I function? And so anyway, so that was what was coming forward to me in terms of working with a precept that took me out of sort of, and I'm not saying that it doesn't take away anything. It doesn't take away my distress about, for me specifically, like what's happening in the Middle East right now. But it provided, instead of just being in distress, it felt like it provided me, how do I turn that towards what I can do functionally in my day-to-day life? And to have more of a heightened awareness of encountering all creations with dignity and respect. So that gives me a place to practice in a practical way. So that's kind of the first half of working with this particular precept in the last few weeks. Well, especially since the Jukai, which was on March 7th. So I guess that's just 2 weeks ago. It seems like a really long time to me. And then the second half of the precept, as it's written in the Zen Peace translation, as it's translated and to some extent transformed in the Zen Peacemaker iteration, is I will give and accept love and friendship without clinging. So that segues to the very micro level, from the macro level to the micro level. And I've heard it said, like everything is, like it's like you can look at everything from the big picture, the little picture, the huge political picture to the microcosm of our lives. So a big part of the microcosm of my life in the last 2 weeks has been that I am cat sitting a cat. I'm cat sitting a cat. That's redundant, right? I'm cat sitting. And I'm cat sitting for a friend who's away. And the part of the deal with the cat sitting was the possibility that maybe this cat would be rehomed to my place in Idlewild. And so I went through a lot of angst about, is this working or not? Is it working for him or not? Is it working for me or not? And the dynamics of it, so I don't know. Raise your hand if you have ever had a cat in your life. So you know what I'm talking, because there are some cat people here. Okay, there are some folks who understand cats. I did not. I've never had a cat on my own before. When I was raising my kids, we had cats and dogs, but I'm living on my own right now, and I've never had a cat as a single person. And part of my curiosity was just to be with a creature that's different, very different, and I've always had dogs. But my point with regard to the precept is that a lot of my angst was coming from, is this working or not? And again, how the precept offered a turning to, can I give and accept love and friendship without clinging? So can I take nice care? And the cat's name is Kevin. Can I take nice care of Kevin? Can I cuddle up with Kevin when he wants to cuddle up? And tolerate the fact that right now he's scratching on my rug downstairs, and he's often going, every door in my house there's a ton of windows in my house, and every door is a glass door except for the front door. So he stands on his hind legs and goes, because he's used to being an outside cat, and he wants to go out. And so a good part of the day, he's going from surface to surface, meowing, saying, could I please go outside? And makes me remember being a mother that probably was fairly indulgent and wanted to have my kids be happy. And I cannot make this kid happy, because there's literally at 10 o'clock in the morning, a coyote walking past my front door. It's not really safe for Kevin to go out unless I just accept Kevin's going to have whatever lifetime he's going to have. My point with the precept, here comes Kevin. My point with the precept is the precept really helped me to turn from the angst about, is this working or not? Should I keep him or not? Should I just friggin' open the door and let him go out or not? To, how do I be with this creature and have a sense of love and friendship without clinging? Just be here with him in this moment. And when he's patting at the door, I get it. I would hate to not be able to go outside too. I am an outdoor cat. And right now, I need to just tolerate that makes him unhappy. And can I still give love and friendship without clinging to want to keep him, without clinging to want to get rid of them and get away from them. So why I wanted to term this in terms of a practice talk is that there really is so much meat, so much material in the precepts to help us, to help us practice with our lives in very practical ways. And so I just kind of wanted to share how that had impacted me from a sort of global level to a really micro, personal, in the moment, what's walking around in my house level. I was also, our sitting group just finished reading. We always read a Dharma, quote unquote Dharma book. So our practice is that on Thursday evenings we sit for a half an hour and then we have a discussion about whatever book we're reading. And the last book that we just finished is Seisen's book, Full Circle. And I had occasion to look that the last 3 chapters were all about relationship. And I remember looking at those and kind of, realizing we're always in relationship to the world. We're always in relationship. It is not possible to not be in relationship. And I remember her saying in a number of those talks that, she kind of felt earlier in her Zen career that, it was really much more about being a solo person, because I think that was also comfortable for her in some ways. I've known Seisen a really long time, like 40 years. Our archetypes of being the solo monk up in the cave in the mountains and all that kind of stuff. And that person was not all by themselves either. They were in relationship to, there was air that they breathed and there was water that they drank and there were animals around. So, and in some ways, coming all the way back to the global aspect, whatever despair and disengagement I would like to feel in having any responsibility in what's happening, it's not possible. It's not possible. I am part of this country, I am part of this world at this moment in time. And yes, I would make different choices, but I can't. I think part of our delusion, the Buddha said, what causes us to suffer is clinging and aversion. I think part of my aversion, so I'll just speak for myself, I think part of my aversion is wanting to feel separate from it. And it's just not possible. So we have to, how do we cope? How do we cope in a completely interrelated and interpenetrated reality? That is actually what's happening. And so I think I just wanted to share how I've been practicing and the utility I see in the precepts. And we had a lot of conversation in our sitting group because most of the people in our sitting group have not had really much of any formal Zen training or anything. And initially we did a study of them leading up to having the Jukai here. And initially people really were feeling like, is this a list of do's and don'ts and kind of oppressive? And so we had a lot of conversation about that. And I think it's extremely important to look into that for oneself, because it's not helpful to pick one more thing to beat ourselves up about or with. But how does this support my practice? So it's an open question, and it doesn't have to be. It just happens to be a tool that's available to us.